The bitter February wind whipped through the dusty streets of Willow Creek, Montana, carrying with it the sound of Olivia Norton's terrified screams. Her scalp burned as Hank Miller, the saloon owner who'd been trying to force her into his brothel for weeks, dragged her by her copper hair through the muddy thoroughfare, her skirts torn and soiled as she desperately clawed at his thick wrists. "You'll work for me whether you like it or not," Hank bellowed, his whiskey-soaked breath visible in the cold morning air. "Your pa's debts ain't gonna pay themselves, girl." Townsfolk turned away, unwilling to challenge the influential businessman whose connections with the county sheriff kept him beyond the reach of justice. Olivia fought with all her might, but her strength was fading. 20 years of life had never prepared her for such brutality, not even after losing both parents within months of each other. "Let her go," came a low, steady voice that cut through the commotion. Hank paused his assault, turning to face the stranger who dared interfere. The man sat atop a magnificent chestnut stallion, his face partially shadowed by a worn leather hat. Dust covered his denim pants and sheepskin coat, evidence of long days on the trail. His hand hovered near the holster at his hip, but he made no move to draw his weapon. "This ain't your business, cowboy," Hank snarled, tightening his grip on Olivia's hair, causing her to whimper. "I'm making it my business," the rider replied, his voice calm but laced with steel. "Release the lady." Hank laughed, a harsh sound that echoed down the street. "Lady? This here's just a debtor's daughter. Her pa owed me money, and she's gonna work it off." The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots hitting the dirt with a soft thud. "That's not how decent men collect debts. Who the hell do you think you are?" Hank demanded, his face reddening with rage. "Name's Jackson Grayson." The cowboy took a step forward, and something in his eyes made Hank hesitate. "Now let her go before I forget my manners." For a moment, the two men stared each other down, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, with a sudden movement, Hank shoved Olivia toward Jackson, causing her to stumble and fall to her knees. "Take the ungrateful wench." "But this ain't over, Grayson," Hank warned, backing away. "Not by a long shot." Jackson helped Olivia to her feet, his touch gentle despite the calluses on his hands. Her tear-streaked face looked up at him with a mixture of fear and gratitude. "Can you ride?" he asked quietly. She nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure. It had been years since she'd been on horseback. With surprising grace, Jackson lifted her onto his horse before mounting behind her. His arms encircled her waist as he took the reins, providing both security and an unexpected warmth against the cold. "Hold on," he murmured near her ear, his breath stirring loose strands of her hair. As they rode away from the scene, Olivia became acutely aware of her situation. She had just been rescued by a complete stranger, and now she was pressed against him, headed who knew where. Yet somehow, for the first time in months, she felt safe. "Where are we going?" she managed to ask, her voice hoarse from screaming. "Somewhere safe," Jackson replied, guiding his horse toward the outskirts of town. "That man back there, he won't stop coming for you, will he?" Olivia shook her head. "No. He believes my father owed him money from gambling debts. I've been trying to avoid him since Pa died 3 months ago, but he found me at the boarding house where I've been working as a maid." Jackson nodded, his expression grim. "I've got a small cabin about 5 miles outside town. We can go there while we figure out what to do next." "We?" Olivia questioned, turning slightly to look at his face. His blue eyes met hers briefly before returning to the trail ahead. "Unless you'd prefer I take you somewhere else? Family, perhaps." "There's no one," she admitted, the words tasting bitter. "My mother passed last year from consumption. My father followed this winter pneumonia. I've been on my own since then." Jackson's arms tightened imperceptibly around her. Then yes, we'll figure this out. I don't make a habit of rescuing damsels and abandoning them right after. Despite everything, Olivia felt a smile tug at her lips. Do you make a habit of rescuing damsels at all, Mr. Grayson? A small chuckle rumbled through his chest. Jackson, please. And no, this is a first for me. The landscape changed as they rode, the cramped buildings of Willow Creek giving way to open prairie dotted with pine trees. The mountains loomed in the distance, still capped with snow despite the approaching spring. The rhythm of the horse's hooves and the solid presence of the man behind her lulled Olivia into an unexpected calm. "Why did you help me?" she asked after they had ridden in silence for some time. Jackson was quiet for a moment. "Where I come from, men don't treat women that way. My pa would have horsewhipped any man who dragged a woman through the street by her hair. Your father sounds like a good man." "He was," Jackson confirmed. "Taught me to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost." There was hung between them another ghost, another loss they shared in common. Olivia didn't press further. She understood the pain of speaking about those who were gone. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Olivia began to notice details about her rescuer. His breathing was steady and deep. His hands, though weathered, handled the reins with a gentle touch. He smelled of leather, pine, and something uniquely his own, not the sour whiskey and sweat she'd come to associate with most men in town. "There it is," Jackson said eventually, pointing to a small structure nestled among a stand of pines. "Home, such as it is." The cabin was modest but sturdy, with a small corral beside it and a thin wisp of smoke rising from the chimney. "You left a fire going?" Olivia asked, concerned. "No," Jackson replied, his posture suddenly alert. "Someone's there." He slowed the horse, approaching cautiously. His right hand moved to rest on his holstered revolver. "Whoever you are," he called out, "show yourself." The cabin door swung open, and an older man stepped onto the porch, hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "Easy there, Jack. Just old Doc Harris checking on your supplies like you asked before you headed to town." Jackson visibly relaxed. "Sorry. Document wasn't expecting you to still be here." The doctor's eyes moved to Olivia, his bushy eyebrows rising slightly. "I see you brought company." "This is Miss Norton," Jackson said formally. "She needed assistance in town." "I can see that," the doctor replied, noting her disheveled appearance and the marks on her wrists where Hank had grabbed her. "Why don't you both come inside? I've got coffee brewing." Jackson dismounted first, then reached up to help Olivia down. Her legs felt weak as they touched the ground, and she stumbled slightly. Jackson's hands steadied her, lingering a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you," she murmured, suddenly self-conscious about her torn dress and tangled hair. The doctor held the door open as Jackson led her inside. The cabin was simple but neat: a table with 2 chairs, a small stove, shelves with provisions, a narrow bed in one corner, and a rocking chair near the hearth where a fire crackled cheerfully. "Sit by the fire, Miss Norton," Doc Harris instructed. "You look chilled to the bone." Olivia obeyed gratefully, extending her hands toward the warmth. Jackson moved about the cabin with practiced efficiency, pouring coffee into tin cups while the doctor rummaged in his medical bag. "Let me see those wrists," the doctor said, kneeling beside her chair. His hands were gentle as he examined the bruises forming on her pale skin. "Nasty business, but nothing broken." "Who did this to you, young lady?" "Hank Miller," Jackson answered before Olivia could speak. "He was dragging her through the street, claiming her father owed him money." Doc Harris's face darkened. "That man's a menace. Been running girls in that saloon of his for years. Sheriff won't touch him because of his connections with the territorial judge." "He won't stop looking for me," Olivia said quietly. He believes I'm his property now. The doctor and Jackson exchanged grim looks. You can't go back to town, the doctor declared, applying a soothing salve to her wrists. Miller's not one to let things go, especially when his pride's been wounded. She can stay here, Jackson said firmly, bringing Olivia a cup of coffee. At least until we sort this out. Olivia looked up at him, surprised by the offer. I couldn't impose. You've already done so much. It's no imposition, Jackson interrupted. I've got the space and it's safe here. Jack's right, Doc Harris agreed, packing away his supplies. This is the last place Miller would look, and even if he did, he'd think twice about confronting our Jack here. Olivia studied the cowboy who had rescued her. There was nothing particularly imposing about his lean frame, but something in the way he carried himself suggested he was not a man to be trifled with. Why would Hank fear you? She asked directly. Jackson handed the doctor a cup of coffee before answering. We have a history. I was a Texas Ranger for 5 years before coming north. Miller ran afoul of the law down there, nothing that stuck. But he knows what I'm capable of. A ranger. Olivia was impressed despite herself. She'd heard stories of the legendary lawmen. Former ranger, Jackson corrected. I left that life behind when my partner was killed. Decided there had to be more peaceful ways to live. So you became a rancher in Montana? Jackson smiled slightly. Not quite yet. I'm working as foreman at the Carson place about 10 miles east. Saving to buy my own spread someday. Doc Harris drained his coffee and set the cup on the table. I should head back to town before it gets dark. Jack, you've got enough provisions here for a week or so, but you'll need more if the lady's staying. I'll ride over to the Carsons tomorrow. Jackson nodded. Mr. Carson's wife might have some clothes Miss Norton could borrow as well. I can't thank you both enough, Olivia said, the enormity of their kindness washing over her. I don't know what would have happened if— No need to think about that now, the doctor interrupted gently. What's important is that you're safe. He turned to Jackson. I'll keep my ears open in town, see what Miller's saying about all this. And I'll let the Carsons know you might need a few days. After the doctor left, an awkward silence fell over the cabin. Olivia remained by the fire, staring into the flames, while Jackson busied himself preparing a simple meal of beans, bacon, and biscuits. I'm sorry about your parents, he said eventually, his back to her as he worked at the stove. Losing family is never easy. Olivia's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. No, it's not. My mother was sick for a long time, so in some ways her passing was a mercy. But my father. She trailed off, remembering his robust laugh, his strong hands that had always made her feel protected. It's the suddenness that's hardest to bear, Jackson offered, glancing over his shoulder at her. When someone's there one day and gone the next. Yes, she whispered. Exactly that. He set a plate before her, the food simple but aromatic. Eat. You'll need your strength. Olivia hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first bite touched her lips. She ate eagerly while Jackson settled across from her with his own plate. Tomorrow I'll speak with Mrs. Carson about some clothes for you, he said between bites. And we can figure out a more permanent solution to your situation. You've already done more than anyone else would, Olivia replied. I don't want to be a burden. Jackson's eyes met hers across the table, steady and sincere. You're not a burden, Miss Norton. You're someone who needed help, and I was in a position to provide it. Nothing more complicated than that. But as the evening progressed, Olivia sensed there was indeed something more complicated developing between them. It wasn't just gratitude she felt when their hands accidentally brushed as they washed the dishes together, or when he insisted she take the bed while he made a pallet near the fire. As darkness fell outside, the cabin grew more intimate. The fire cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the wind whispered around the eaves. Olivia lay in Jackson's bed, surrounded by his scent, listening to his steady breathing across the room. "Jackson?" she ventured into the darkness. "Yes. How did you come to be in Willow Creek today? It seems providential." There was a rustling sound as he shifted on his makeshift bed. "I was delivering a message to the telegraph office for Mr. Carson. Pure chance, I suppose." "I don't believe that," Olivia said softly. "I think you were meant to be there." Jackson was quiet for so long that Olivia thought he might have fallen asleep. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. "My ma used to say that God puts people in our paths for a reason. I'm not sure I believe in such things anymore, but today—" He paused. "Today made me wonder." The honesty in his voice touched something deep within her. "I've been wondering about that too. After losing my parents, I questioned if anyone was watching over us at all. But then you appeared just when I needed someone most." "Get some sleep, Olivia," Jackson said gently. "Tomorrow will bring its own challenges." As she drifted toward sleep, Olivia realized it was the first time he had used her given name. She liked the way it sounded in his deep voice, like something precious and worth protecting. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the cabin's single window. Olivia woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of movement. Opening her eyes, she found Jackson already dressed and preparing breakfast. "Good morning," he greeted when he noticed she was awake. "Hope you slept well." Olivia sat up, suddenly conscious of her rumpled appearance. "Better than I expected, thank you. There's water in the basin if you'd like to wash up," Jackson offered, indicating a corner of the cabin she hadn't noticed the night before. "And I've left out a clean shirt of mine. It'll be too big, but it might be more comfortable than sleeping in your dress." His thoughtfulness touched her. "Thank you. That's very kind." Jackson nodded, turning back to the stove. "I need to check on the horse and then ride to the Carson place. Will you be all right here alone for a few hours?" "Of course," Olivia assured him, though the thought of being left alone sent a flutter of anxiety through her chest. "I'm quite capable of looking after myself." A small smile lifted the corner of Jackson's mouth. "I don't doubt that for a minute, Miss Norton. There's a rifle above the door if you need it, though I don't expect any trouble." After breakfast, Jackson prepared to leave. At the door, he hesitated, looking back at Olivia. "Bar the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or Doc Harris." "I will," she promised. "Be careful." Something passed between them in that moment, an unspoken connection that neither was ready to acknowledge. Then Jackson nodded once and was gone, the door closing firmly behind him. Alone in the cabin, Olivia took the opportunity to properly wash and change. Jackson's shirt hung to her knees, the fabric soft from many washings. She rolled up the sleeves and used a piece of cord she found in a drawer to cinch it around her waist. The result was hardly fashionable, but it was clean and comfortable. To keep herself occupied, she decided to tidy the already neat cabin. As she straightened the few personal items on the shelves, she learned small things about the man who had rescued her. A worn Bible with the name Martha Grayson, inscribed inside his mother, perhaps. A small wooden box containing a Texas Ranger badge and a daguerreotype of two young men in uniform, arms slung over each other's shoulders. Jackson looked younger in the image, his face less weathered, his smile unguarded. On another shelf, she found a collection of books surprising for a cowboy's cabin. Milton's Paradise Lost, Thoreau's Walden, and several volumes of Shakespeare nestled alongside practical manuals on animal husbandry and wilderness survival. Olivia ran her fingers over the spines, a smile touching her lips. Jackson Grayson was clearly more than he appeared. The hours passed slowly. Olivia read from one of the books, swept the floor, and stared out the window at the pine trees swaying in the wind. By mid-afternoon, she was growing anxious. Surely Jackson should have returned by now? Just as she was considering whether to worry, she heard hoofbeats approaching. Cautiously, she peered through the window, relief flooding her when she recognized Jackson's broad-shouldered figure. He wasn't alone. A woman rode beside him on a dappled mare. Olivia unbarred the door as they dismounted, stepping out onto the porch to greet them. "Miss Norton, this is Mrs. Carson," Jackson introduced. "She insisted on coming to meet you herself." Mrs. Carson was a handsome woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and practical clothing. She assessed Olivia with a sympathetic gaze. "You poor dear," she said, clasping Olivia's hands in her own. "Jack told us what happened. That Miller fellow is a disgrace to the territory." "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Carson," Olivia replied, warmed by the woman's genuine concern. "Elizabeth, please," Mrs. Carson insisted. "I've brought some clothes that might fit you, and provisions to ease Jack's burden of feeding an extra mouth." "That's very generous of you," Olivia said, stepping back to allow them inside the cabin. Elizabeth Carson bustled in, immediately making herself at home. She unpacked a large bundle containing several dresses, undergarments, a warm shawl, and even a pair of boots that looked to be close to Olivia's size. "These were my daughters," Elizabeth explained, laying out the clothes. "She married a man from Denver last year and left most of her things behind. Said she wanted a fresh start with her new husband." "I couldn't possibly," Olivia began. "Nonsense," Elizabeth cut her off firmly. "They're just gathering dust at our place. Better they go to someone who needs them." While the women sorted through the clothes, Jackson brought in supplies and then excused himself to tend to the horses. Elizabeth watched him go with a knowing look before turning back to Olivia. "He's a good man, Jack is," she said conversationally. "Been with us for nearly 2 years now. Best foreman we've ever had." "He's been very kind to me," Olivia agreed carefully. Elizabeth's eyes twinkled. "Kind, yes. And if I'm not mistaken, quite taken with you as well." Heat rose to Olivia's cheeks. "Oh no, I'm sure that's not, my dear," Elizabeth interrupted gently. "I've known Jack Grayson long enough to recognize when something's shifted in him. He's always been respectful, hardworking, and private, keeps to himself most of the time. But the way he spoke about you today." She shook her head, smiling. "Well, let's just say it's the most animated I've seen him in 2 years." Olivia didn't know how to respond to that. The idea that Jackson might feel something beyond simple chivalry toward her was both thrilling and terrifying. "Now," Elizabeth continued briskly, "my husband and I have discussed your situation, and we'd like to offer you a position at our ranch. We could use help with the house, and having another woman around would be a blessing for me." "A position?" Olivia repeated, surprised by the offer. "Nothing demeaning," Elizabeth assured her. "You'd have your own room in the main house, proper wages, and the protection of the Carson name. No one, not even Hank Miller, would dare trouble you there." The generosity overwhelmed Olivia. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Elizabeth's expression softened. "Because Jack asked us to consider it, and because I was once a young woman alone in the world too. Someone helped me then. It seems only right to pass that kindness forward." When Jackson returned, Elizabeth shared her proposition with him. The look of relief on his face told Olivia that he had been worried about her future. "It's a good offer," he said, though something in his voice suggested conflicted emotions. "The Carsons are fair employers, and you'd be safe there. Jack would be nearby as well," Elizabeth added with a hint of mischief. "His cabin is on our property, about a mile from the main house." Later, after Elizabeth had departed with a promise to expect Olivia within the week, Jackson and Olivia sat together for supper. The new clothes had transformed her appearance, a simple blue dress that matched her eyes, her copper hair neatly braided. "You look," Jackson began, then seemed at a loss for words. "Better than a bedraggled waif dragged through the mud?" Olivia suggested with a small smile. "I was going to say beautiful," Jackson replied quietly. "But yes, that too." The compliment hung in the air between them, changing the atmosphere in the small cabin. Olivia busied herself with her food, not daring to meet his eyes. "Will you accept the Carsons' offer?" Jackson asked after a while. Olivia considered the question carefully. "I think I will. It seems a good opportunity, and I need to rebuild my life somehow." Jackson nodded, his expression unreadable. "It would be the sensible choice." "And you?" Olivia ventured. "Will you continue as their foreman?" "For now," he replied, his gaze distant. "I've been saving for my own land. Another year or two should give me enough for a modest start." "That's admirable," Olivia said sincerely. "To have such a clear goal." Jackson's eyes refocused on her. "And what of your goals, Olivia? Before all this happened, what did you want from life?" The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her that in a very long time, perhaps ever. Her father had always assumed she would marry and have children. Her mother had hoped she would find a good husband who would provide for her. "I'm not sure," she admitted finally. "I enjoyed working at the school in Willow Creek before it closed last year. Teaching the children to read and write felt meaningful." She paused, considering. "I suppose I wanted what most women want: a home, a family of my own. Security. Simple things that shouldn't be so hard to obtain," Jackson observed. "Yet they are," Olivia replied softly. "Especially for a woman alone." Jackson studied her across the table, his expression thoughtful. "You won't be alone at the Carsons'. Elizabeth will look after you, and I'll be nearby if you ever need anything." The promise in his words warmed her more than the fire crackling in the hearth. For the first time since her father's death, Olivia felt a flicker of hope for the future. The next few days established a comfortable routine. During the day, Jackson would attend to necessary tasks around the cabin or ride out to check on the Carson property, while Olivia kept house and prepared meals. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, sometimes reading aloud from Jackson's books, sometimes sharing stories from their lives. Olivia learned that Jackson had grown up in East Texas, the son of a small rancher and a schoolteacher mother. He joined the Rangers at 22 after his parents died in a flash flood, serving 5 years before the death of his partner. The young man from the photograph sent him north seeking a different life. In turn, she told him about her childhood in Ohio, her family's move west when she was 16, and the struggles they'd faced in Montana Territory. She described her brief time as a teacher's assistant, and the dreams she'd harbored of someday opening a school of her own. "You still could, you know," Jackson said one evening as they sat side by side in front of the fire. "The territory needs educated women like you." "Perhaps someday," Olivia replied, though the dream seemed distant now. "For now, I'll be grateful for the Carsons' generosity." Jackson was quiet for a moment, staring into the flames. "I rode into Willow Creek today while you were napping." Olivia tensed. "Did you see him? Miller?" "No, but I spoke with Doc Harris. The word around town is that Miller's furious, claiming I stole his property." Jackson's jaw tightened. As if any human being could be property. "What will he do?" "Nothing for now," Jackson assured her. "He's all bluster unless he thinks he has the advantage. Once you're established at the Carsons with their name protecting you, he'll likely move on to easier targets." Olivia wasn't entirely convinced, but she nodded anyway. "I hope you're right." "There's something else," Jackson added, turning to face her. "I found a lawyer in town who's willing to look into your father's supposed debts. If Miller forged gambling markers or inflated the amounts, We might be able to clear your name entirely. You did that for me." Olivia was touched by his continued efforts on her behalf. "It was the right thing to do," he said simply, though the intensity in his eyes suggested his motivations might be more complex. As the days passed, Olivia became increasingly aware of a growing attraction between them. It manifested in small ways: lingering glances, the brush of hands when passing dishes, conversations that stretched late into the night. Jackson was unfailingly respectful, maintaining appropriate distances despite the intimate setting of the cabin, but Olivia sensed his restraint was costing him effort. For her part, she found herself thinking of him in ways that would have shocked her proper mother. She admired the strength in his hands as he chopped wood, the grace with which he moved despite his tall frame, the thoughtful consideration he showed in every interaction with her. On the 5th night of her stay, a fierce snowstorm blew in unexpectedly. The wind howled around the cabin, finding every crack and crevice, dropping the temperature dramatically despite the roaring fire. Olivia huddled under the blankets in Jackson's bed, unable to get warm. "Olivia!" Jackson's voice came from across the room. "Are you all right?" "Just cold," she admitted through chattering teeth. "I'm not used to such bitter weather." She heard him rise, then the sound of him stoking the fire. Moments later, he approached the bed, additional blankets in his arms. "These might help," he offered, draping them over her. His hand brushed against her shoulder, and he frowned. "You're freezing." "I'll be fine," Olivia insisted, though she continued to shiver. "Please go back to your bed. You need rest too." Jackson hesitated, conflict evident in his expression. "This cold is dangerous, Olivia. People die from it out here." Before she could protest further, he made a decision. "Move over," he instructed gently. "I promise I'll behave honorably, but you need warmth, and I have it to give." Olivia's heart raced as she shifted to make room. Jackson slid under the blankets beside her, careful to stay on top of the quilt that covered her while pulling the additional blankets over them both. He kept a respectful distance, but even so, his body heat began to reach her almost immediately. "Better?" he asked, his voice low in the darkness. "Yes," she whispered, gradually relaxing as warmth enveloped her. "Thank you." They lay in silence, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the wind outside. Despite the innocence of the arrangement, Olivia was acutely aware of his presence, the rhythm of his breathing, the clean scent of his skin, the solid strength of him just inches away. "Jackson?" she ventured after a while. Why did you really help me that day in town?" The truth. The question hung between them, weighted with significance they both recognized. "The truth," he repeated softly. "The truth is that I saw a woman being mistreated, and everything in me rebelled against it. I couldn't stand by and watch. That's all." Olivia pressed, knowing there had to be more. Jackson was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, that's not all. When I saw you fighting him, even though you were outmatched and terrified, I saw a courage that struck me to my core. And when our eyes met for that brief moment before I pulled you onto my horse, I felt connected to you somehow, as if I'd been waiting to find you without knowing I was looking." The honesty of his confession took her breath away. Emboldened by darkness and his openness, Olivia turned onto her side to face him, though she could barely make out his features in the dim light. "I felt it too," she admitted. "Not just gratitude, but something more. Something I can't explain." Jackson's hand found hers under the blankets, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I've never believed in love at first sight," he said quietly. "Seems too simple for something so profound. But I believe in recognition, one soul recognizing another. Is that what happened with us?" Olivia asked, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain he must hear it. "I think it might be," Jackson replied, "though it scares me to admit it." "Why?" "Because it makes me want things I've never let myself want before," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "A home that's more than four walls. A future that's not just about survival." "And that frightens you?" Olivia wondered, squeezing his hand gently. "Terrifies me," Jackson confirmed with a soft laugh. "I've been alone for so long, Olivia. I've convinced myself it was better that way, safer. Letting someone in means risking loss, and I've had my fill of that." Olivia understood completely. After losing both parents, she'd built walls around her heart too, determined to rely only on herself. "Perhaps," she suggested carefully, "we're both tired of being alone." Jackson's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. "Perhaps we are." They fell asleep that way, hands joined, the storm raging outside while something new and fragile blossomed between them. Morning brought clear skies and a blanket of pristine snow covering the landscape. It also brought a new awareness between Jackson and Olivia, a shift in their relationship that neither could deny. As they worked together preparing breakfast, their movements seemed choreographed, each anticipating the other's needs without words. "I should go to the Carson place today," Jackson said as they ate. "Check that everything weathered the storm all right. Would you like to come? See where you'll be living?" Olivia nodded, eager for the outing despite the cold. "I'd like that very much." They rode double on Jackson's horse, Olivia seated before him as they had been on that first day. The snow-covered landscape was breathtaking, pine trees laden with white, sunlight sparkling on untouched drifts, their breath visible in the crisp air. Olivia found herself leaning back against Jackson's chest, comfortable in a way she hadn't expected to be. The Carson Ranch was impressive, a large main house, several outbuildings, corrals, and a substantial barn. Cattle dotted the distant fields, dark shapes against the white snow. Smoke rose invitingly from the house's chimney. Elizabeth Carson welcomed them warmly, insisting they come in for coffee and to warm themselves. Her husband, Robert Carson, was a sturdy man with a weathered face and a firm handshake. He greeted Olivia with genuine kindness, confirming their offer of employment. "We've prepared the east bedroom for you," Elizabeth told Olivia as she showed her through the comfortable home. "It gets lovely morning light, and you'll have a view of the mountains." The room was indeed charming, simply furnished but welcoming, with a quilt-covered bed, a small writing desk, and a rocking chair near the window. "It's perfect," Olivia said sincerely. "I don't know how to thank you both." "You can thank us by being happy here," Elizabeth replied with a warm smile, "and perhaps by teaching our ranch hands' children their letters. Several of our workers have families, and the nearest school is too far for daily attendance." "I'd love that," Olivia exclaimed, the idea rekindling her old dream. When they rejoined the men in the main room, Olivia found Jackson deep in conversation with Mr. Carson. They broke off when she entered, and something in their manner suggested they had been discussing her. The visit lasted several hours, with the Carsons insisting they stay for lunch. By the time Jackson and Olivia prepared to leave, she had a clear picture of what her new life would entail, and she was genuinely looking forward to it. "You'll come on Monday, then?" Elizabeth confirmed as they prepared to depart. "Yes, if that suits you," Olivia agreed, accepting the older woman's embrace. "It does. And Jack, you'll bring her?" Elizabeth asked, her eyes twinkling with something like mischief. "Of course, madam," Jackson replied formally, though color touched his cheeks. As they rode back to the cabin, Olivia found herself both excited for her new position and strangely melancholy about leaving the little cabin that had become a sanctuary. "They're good people," she said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "I'll be fortunate to work for them." "Yes," Jackson agreed, his voice oddly tight. The best employers I've known. Sensing his mood, Olivia asked, "Is something troubling you?" Jackson was quiet for a moment before responding. "Mr. Carson and I had a conversation while you were with Elizabeth about my future at the ranch." "Oh." Olivia's heart constricted with sudden fear. "Are you leaving?" "Not exactly," Jackson said. "He's offered me a partnership." "A partnership?" Olivia twisted in the saddle to see his face. "Jackson, that's wonderful." "It is," he agreed, though his expression remained serious. "He's getting older, has no sons to take over the operation. Says he's been watching me, thinks I have the right instincts for ranching. He'd provide the land and most of the cattle. I'd provide the labor and management. Eventually, I could buy him out entirely." "That's an incredible opportunity," Olivia said, genuinely happy for him. "It's your dream, isn't it? Your own ranch." "Close to it," Jackson acknowledged, "though my dreams have been expanding lately." Something in the way he said it made Olivia's pulse quicken. "How so?" Jackson reined in the horse, bringing them to a stop in a small clearing. The afternoon sun sparkled off the snow, creating a dazzling effect around them. He dismounted and helped Olivia down, but instead of releasing her, he kept his hands at her waist. "Olivia," he began, his blue eyes intent on hers, "I know we've known each other only a short time, some might say too short, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life than I am of my feelings for you." Olivia's breath caught in her throat as he continued, his voice deep and sincere. "When I pulled you onto my horse that day, I thought I was saving you. Now I realize you might have saved me instead from a life of solitude, from the fear that kept me from reaching for happiness." He took a deep breath. "I'm not asking for promises yet. I know you need time to heal, to establish yourself. But I want you to know that my heart is yours, if you'll have it." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, not from sadness but from overwhelming emotion. "Jackson, you don't need to answer now," he assured her quickly. "I just wanted you to understand why Carson's offer means so much to me. It's not just about the land or the cattle. It's about being able to offer you a future someday, if that's what you want." Olivia's heart felt too full for words. Instead, she raised herself on tiptoe and pressed her lips to his in a kiss that conveyed what she couldn't express aloud: her growing love for this honorable man, her gratitude for his patience, her hope for their shared future. Jackson responded with tender restraint, his arms encircling her waist, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened into something more profound than either had anticipated. When they finally parted, both were breathing quickly, their faces flushed with more than cold. "I think," Olivia said softly, "that was answer enough for now." Jackson's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "More than enough," he agreed, helping her back onto the horse before mounting behind her. The remaining days before Olivia's move to the Carson Ranch passed in a sweet haze. They were more open with their affection, now stolen kisses while washing dishes, hands clasped as they read by the fire, conversations that delved deeper into their hopes and fears. Yet Jackson maintained his respectful distance at night, insisting on sleeping on his pallet by the fire despite Olivia's assurance that she trusted him completely. "It's not a question of trust," he explained gently. "It's about doing things properly. You deserve that, Olivia." His old-fashioned sense of honor only made her love him more. On Sunday evening, their last night in the cabin together, Jackson presented her with a small package wrapped in brown paper. "What's this?" Olivia asked, surprised by the gesture. "Open it," he encouraged, watching her expectantly. Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with delicate flowers. "I noticed you writing on scraps of paper," Jackson explained. "Thought you might like something proper to keep your thoughts in." Olivia ran her fingers over the smooth leather, touched by his thoughtfulness. "It's beautiful, Jackson. Thank you." "There's an inscription," he said, his voice suddenly shy. "On the first page." Olivia opened the journal to find his strong, clear handwriting. "To Olivia, whose courage inspires me daily. May these pages hold your dreams until they find their way into the world. With deepest affection, Jackson." "I love it," she whispered, blinking back tears. "And I haven't anything to give you in return." Jackson took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "You've given me more than you know already." The next morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect February day for new beginnings. They packed Olivia's few belongings, along with the clothes Elizabeth had provided, and prepared for the ride to the Carson ranch. There was a bittersweetness to leaving the cabin that had sheltered their growing love. "I'll miss this place," Olivia admitted as she took one last look around. "It feels like home somehow." Jackson's eyes held a promise as he replied, "We'll make another home, Olivia. A better one." They had just mounted Jackson's horse when the sound of approaching riders caught their attention. Jackson tensed, his hand moving instinctively to his holster. "Stay behind me," he instructed as 3 riders came into view on the trail leading to the cabin. Olivia's heart sank as she recognized the central figure, Hank Miller, flanked by 2 rough-looking men she didn't know. Her fingers dug into Jackson's arm as fear washed over her. "Well, well," Miller called as they approached, his voice carrying across the clearing. "If it isn't the hero and his damsel. Thought you could hide her away forever, Grayson?" Jackson's posture remained calm, but Olivia felt the tension in his body. "What do you want, Miller?" "What's rightfully mine," Miller snarled, his gaze fixing on Olivia with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "The girl's father owed me money, and I aim to collect one way or another." "She doesn't owe you anything," Jackson replied evenly. "And we have a lawyer looking into those supposed debts. I suspect they won't hold up to scrutiny." Miller's face darkened with anger. "You threatening me, Ranger?" "Not threatening," Jackson corrected. "Just stating facts. Now, we have business elsewhere, so I suggest you and your friends turn around and head back to town." For a moment, it seemed Miller might challenge them further. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "You think this is over?" he asked, his eyes narrowed. "It's just beginning, Grayson. I don't forget and I don't forgive. You've made an enemy today." "Wouldn't be the first time," Jackson replied calmly. "Now move aside." With a final venomous glare, Miller jerked his horse around. "This isn't over," he called over his shoulder as he and his companions rode away. "Not by a long shot." Olivia released the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Will he come after us?" "Not today," Jackson assured her, though his eyes followed the retreating riders with concern. "And not at the Carsons. He's all talk when the odds aren't in his favor." Despite his confidence, they rode carefully to the ranch, Jackson alert for any sign of Miller's return. But they arrived without incident, where Elizabeth welcomed Olivia with open arms and showed her to her new room. "You'll join us for Sunday dinner, won't you, Jack?" Elizabeth invited as Olivia settled in. "If I wouldn't be imposing," Jackson replied, though his eyes sought Olivia's for confirmation. "Not at all," Olivia assured him with a warm smile. "I'd like that very much." The Sunday dinner was pleasant, with good food and easy conversation. Robert Carson discussed ranch business with Jackson, while Elizabeth told Olivia about the children she hoped would attend the small school they planned to establish in one of the outbuildings. As dusk approached, Jackson reluctantly prepared to leave for his own cabin. He and Olivia stepped onto the porch for a moment of privacy. "Will you be all right?" he asked, concern evident in his eyes. "I'll be fine," Olivia assured him, though she already felt the absence of his constant presence. "The Carsons have been so kind, and knowing you're nearby is a comfort. Jackson took her hands in his. I'll see you tomorrow. Mr. Carson and I have work to do on the north pasture, but I'll come by in the evening if that's all right. I'd like that, Olivia replied, her heart warming at the thought. He bent to kiss her gently, mindful of the open door behind them. Good night, Olivia. Good night, Jackson. Watching him ride away, Olivia felt a curious mixture of emotions: excitement for her new beginning, sadness at their separation, and a deep, abiding happiness that she had found him in this vast, often cruel territory. The following weeks established new routines. Olivia quickly settled into her role at the Carson Ranch, helping Elizabeth with household duties and beginning to teach the ranch hands children in the converted outbuilding. Jackson visited almost daily, often staying for dinner, his relationship with Olivia growing deeper with each passing day. News from town came regularly via Doc Harris or the supply wagons. The lawyer Jackson had engaged found evidence that Hank Miller had indeed forged gambling markers in Joseph Norton's name, adding to debts that were already paid. The territorial marshal had been notified, though action was slow in coming. Miller himself remained in Willow Creek, reportedly furious but constrained by the growing scrutiny of his business practices. The threat he represented lingered in the background of Olivia's new life, but with each passing day, it seemed more distant. Spring arrived in earnest, transforming the landscape. Wildflowers dotted the meadows, calves were born, and the ranch hummed with activity. Olivia's small school grew to 8 students, ranging in age from 5 to 12, their eager faces and quick minds fulfilling a dream she had thought lost. On a warm evening in late April, Jackson invited Olivia for a ride. They hadn't had much time alone together lately, both busy with their respective duties, and she accepted eagerly. He brought a second horse for her this time, a gentle mare borrowed from the Carson stable. Where are we going? Olivia asked as they rode side by side through a flowering meadow. I have something to show you, Jackson replied, a mysterious smile playing at the corners of his mouth. They rode for almost an hour, cresting a small rise that overlooked a valley she hadn't seen before. A creek wound through it, its banks lined with cottonwoods. The grass was lush and green, perfect for grazing cattle. Near the creek stood the beginnings of a structure, a cabin larger than Jackson's current dwelling, its foundation and frame already in place. What is this? Olivia asked, her heart beginning to race. Jackson dismounted and helped her down, leading her toward the partially built cabin. This is part of the partnership with Carson, he explained. This valley is mine or will be, once the papers are finalized. The best grazing land on the property, and the creek never runs dry, even in August. You're building a new home, Olivia observed, taking in the sturdy construction. I am, Jackson confirmed, watching her face carefully. It will have 3 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, and a sitting room with bookshelves built into the walls. The porch will wrap around 2 sides, so we can watch both sunrise and sunset. We, Olivia echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Jackson took both her hands in his blue eyes serious. Olivia Norton, these past months have been the happiest of my life. Getting to know you, seeing your strength and kindness, watching you build your school, it's all confirmed what I suspected that very first day. He took a deep breath. I love you. I want to build a life with you if you'll have me. Tears of joy welled in Olivia's eyes. Are you asking what I think you're asking? In answer, Jackson reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Opening it revealed a delicate gold ring with a single pearl nestled in the center. It was my mother's, he explained softly. My father gave it to her when they had nothing but hope and hard work ahead of them. I'd be honored if you'd wear it as my wife. Yes? Olivia breathed, her heart so full she thought it might burst. Yes, Jackson, I will marry you. his face illuminated with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he gathered her in his arms, lifting her off her feet in an exuberant embrace that ended with a kiss so tender it brought fresh tears to her eyes. "When?" she asked when they finally parted, her arms still around his neck. "As soon as the cabin is finished," Jackson replied. "Another month, perhaps 2. I want to bring you to a proper home, not a half-built shell." "I don't care about that," Olivia assured him, glancing around at what would become their home. "I'd live in a tent with you if necessary." Jackson laughed, the sound full and rich in the open air. "No need for that. But your eagerness does a man's heart good." They spent the afternoon exploring the valley, planning their future together. Jackson showed her where he envisioned a garden, a corral for horses, perhaps even a small schoolhouse someday when there were more children in the area. As the sun began to dip toward the western mountains, they reluctantly mounted their horses for the ride back to the Carson ranch. Elizabeth took one look at their glowing faces and the pearl ring on Olivia's hand and let out a cry of delight. "Finally!" she exclaimed, embracing them both. "Robert and I were beginning to think we'd need to lock you two in the barn together to get this result." The news spread quickly through the ranch. A celebration dinner was hastily arranged, with the ranch hands joining in to toast the couple's happiness. Plans for the wedding became the main topic of conversation, with Elizabeth insisting on helping with all the preparations. "June would be lovely," she suggested. "Everything will be green and blooming, and the cabin should be finished by then." "June it is," Jackson agreed, his hand finding Olivia's under the table. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Jackson divided his time between ranch duties and completing their cabin, often working from dawn until dusk. Olivia continued teaching while helping Elizabeth prepare for the wedding, sewing a simple but elegant dress, planning the modest feast they would share with their friends, and arranging for the circuit preacher to perform the ceremony. As May turned to June, their happiness seemed complete. The cabin was nearly finished, lacking only final touches. The wedding was set for the 3rd Saturday of the month, just 2 weeks away. Even the news from town was positive. The territorial marshal had finally arrived to investigate the complaints against Hank Miller, and it seemed likely he would face charges for his fraudulent practices. Then, on a warm Tuesday afternoon as Olivia was dismissing her students, a ranch hand galloped into the yard, his face grim. "Miss Norton," he called urgently, "you'd best come quick. There's trouble at the main house." Heart pounding, Olivia hurried after him, fear clutching at her throat. As they approached the house, she saw a group of men on horseback in the yard, Hank Miller at their center, his face twisted with malevolent satisfaction. Robert Carson stood on the porch, a shotgun in his hands. "You're trespassing, Miller," he was saying as Olivia approached. "Take your men and leave my property." "Not until I get what I came for," Miller replied, his gaze shifting to Olivia as she came into view. "Ah, there she is, the thieving Norton girl." "I've stolen nothing from you," Olivia stated firmly, though fear made her voice waver slightly. Miller's laugh was ugly. "Your father stole plenty, and now the marshal's trying to pin his crimes on me. Convenient that he's dead and can't defend himself, isn't it?" "The evidence speaks for itself," Robert Carson interjected. "Now leave before this gets ugly." "Where's your pet ranger?" Miller asked Olivia, ignoring Carson's warning. "Not here to protect you today?" Olivia lifted her chin. "I don't need protection from a coward like you." Miller's face darkened with rage. "We'll see about that." He turned to his men. "Burn the school," he ordered. "Let's see how welcome the Norton girl is when she brings destruction to Carson land." Before anyone could react, 2 of Miller's men broke away, heading for the small building where Olivia taught. One carried a torch already lit. "No!" Olivia cried, starting after them. Robert Carson raised his shotgun. "Stop right there, Miller." The situation might have escalated into violence if not for the sound of approaching riders. Jackson, returning from the north pasture with several ranch hands, took in the scene at a glance. His face hardened as he spurred his horse forward, placing himself between Miller's men and the schoolhouse. "That's far enough," he called, his voice carrying the authority of his ranger days. The men with the torch hesitated, looking to Miller for direction. Miller's expression shifted from rage to calculation. "Grayson," he acknowledged coldly. "Just the man I wanted to see." "Can't say the feeling's mutual," Jackson replied, dismounting smoothly. "You're trespassing on Carson land and threatening a lady. Neither sits well with me." "The lady, as you call her, is a thief," Miller insisted. "Her father swindled me, and now she's turned the law against me with her lies." "The only liar here is you, Miller," Jackson stated flatly. "The marshal has your forged markers. It's over." For a moment it seemed Miller might back down. Then, with a sudden movement, he drew his pistol, aiming directly at Jackson. "It's over when I say it's over," he snarled. Several things happened at once. Robert Carson fired a warning shot into the air. The ranch hands moved to protect Olivia. And Jackson, with the lightning reflexes of his ranger training, drew his own weapon. The ensuing moments were chaos. Miller fired, his shot going wide as his horse reared in fright from Carson's shotgun blast. Jackson's return fire was more accurate, catching Miller in the shoulder and spinning him backward off his horse. The would-be arsonists dropped their torch and fled, followed quickly by the rest of Miller's men, leaving their leader writhing in the dust. "Someone get Doc Harris," Jackson ordered, keeping his gun trained on Miller as he approached. "And someone else ride for the marshal. He'll want to add attempted murder to Miller's charges." With Miller secured and the immediate danger past, Jackson turned to Olivia, his eyes searching her face. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though she was trembling from the aftermath of fear and adrenaline. "Thanks to you." His arm went around her shoulders, steady and reassuring. "He won't threaten you again," Jackson promised. "This time he's going away for good." And he was right. The territorial marshal arrived the following day, taking custody of a sullen, wounded Hank Miller. The charges against him were numerous fraud, extortion, attempted arson, and attempted murder. The citizens of Willow Creek, long intimidated by his influence, now came forward with their own complaints. It became clear that Miller would spend many years in prison for his crimes. With the threat removed, the final preparations for the wedding proceeded with renewed joy. The cabin was completed, furnished with simple but sturdy pieces, many made by Jackson's own hands. Olivia's students presented her with a quilt they had made under Elizabeth's guidance, each square containing a heartfelt message or image from the child who created it. On the morning of the wedding, Olivia stood in her room at the Carson house, Elizabeth helping her with the final touches to her appearance. The dress they had created together was simple but elegant cream-colored cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs, fitted at the waist and flowing to the floor in a gentle cascade. "You look beautiful," Elizabeth said, adjusting the small wreath of wildflowers in Olivia's copper hair. "Jack won't be able to take his eyes off you." "I can hardly believe this is happening," Olivia admitted, touching the pearl ring that would soon be joined by a gold band. 6 months ago, I was alone and frightened, being dragged through the street by my hair. And now you're about to marry a wonderful man who adores you," Elizabeth finished for her, squeezing her shoulders affectionately. "Life takes unexpected turns, my dear. The trick is to recognize the blessings when they come." The ceremony took place in the valley where their cabin stood, with the creek providing a musical backdrop to their vows. Robert Carson had constructed a simple arbor, entwined with wildflowers and ribbons. Beneath it, Jackson waited, looking handsome and slightly nervous in a new suit, his hair neatly trimmed for the occasion. Olivia would always remember the look on his face when he saw her approaching on Robert's arm, a look of such profound love and wonder that it brought tears to her eyes. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promising to love, honor, and cherish each other through all the joys and challenges life might bring. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Jackson's kiss was tender yet possessive, a promise of the life they would build together. The celebration that followed was joyous, with food and music and dancing that lasted well into the evening. As the sun began to set, the newlyweds bid farewell to their guests and rode together to their new home. Jackson had decorated the cabin with wildflowers, and a fire welcomed them in the hearth despite the summer evening. "Welcome home, Mrs. Grayson," Jackson said softly as he carried her across the threshold. Olivia wound her arms around his neck, overcome with happiness. "I love the sound of that." Their first night as husband and wife was everything Olivia had dreamed it might be: tender, passionate, and filled with discoveries about each other that had awaited this sacred union. In Jackson's arms, she found a love more profound than she had imagined possible, a connection that transcended the physical to touch their very souls. In the quiet aftermath, as they lay entwined beneath the quilts Elizabeth had gifted them, Jackson traced gentle patterns on Olivia's bare shoulder. "Happy?" he asked, his voice a low rumble in the darkness. "Completely," she assured him, nestling closer against his warmth. "And you?" "More than I ever thought possible," Jackson replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I used to think happiness was having land of my own, building something that would last. Now I know it's this you, us, the life we'll create together." "Tell me about that life," Olivia requested, content to listen to his voice as sleep began to claim her. Jackson's arms tightened around her as he painted their future with words: the ranch they would build together, the family they hoped to have, the school she would expand as more settlers came to the valley. It was a vision of hard work and simple pleasures, of challenges faced together and joys multiplied by sharing. "And years from now," he concluded softly, "when we're old and gray, we'll sit on that porch and watch the sunset, remembering this night and all the days between." "That sounds perfect," Olivia murmured sleepily. "Absolutely perfect." Their life together wasn't without challenges, of course. The Montana Territory could be harsh and unforgiving. There were difficult winters and dry summers, cattle illnesses and market fluctuations. But through it all, Jackson and Olivia Grayson faced each obstacle together, their bond only strengthening with each passing year. The following spring brought their first child, a daughter they named Martha Elizabeth, after both their mothers. 2 years later, a son joined the family, Robert Jackson Grayson, sturdy and strong like his father. Eventually, there would be 5 Grayson children running through the valley, learning in the schoolhouse Olivia established, which grew to serve all the children within riding distance. The ranch prospered under Jackson's careful management. What began as a partnership with Robert Carson eventually became the Grayson Ranch when the older man retired, selling his remaining interest to Jackson and moving with Elizabeth to a smaller property nearby. Olivia's school became known throughout the territory for its excellence, drawing families to settle in the area. What had once been a remote valley gradually became a small community, with the Graysons at its heart. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Olivia would touch the faded scars on her scalp, reminders of that terrible day when Hank Miller had dragged her through the streets of Willow Creek. The memory no longer brought fear, only gratitude for the unexpected turn her life had taken afterward. "What are you thinking about?" Jackson would ask when he found her in such contemplative moods. "How strange life is," she would reply. "How one moment of cruelty led to a lifetime of happiness." And he would gather her in his arms, the same strong arms that had pulled her onto his horse that fateful day, and remind her that sometimes the darkest moments precede the brightest dawns. On their 30th wedding anniversary, with their children grown and grandchildren beginning to arrive, Jackson and Olivia sat together on the porch he had promised her long ago, watching the sunset paint the valley in gold and crimson. "Do you ever regret it?" Olivia asked, her head resting on his shoulder, her hand clasped in his as it had been countless times over the years. "Rescuing a strange woman and having your life completely overturned as a result?" Jackson's laugh was as warm and rich as it had been when they were young. "Regret the best decision I ever made? Not for a single moment." He pressed a kiss to her silver-streaked copper hair. "You were never just a strange woman to me, Olivia. From the moment our eyes met, you were the rest of my life." And as the sun dipped below the western mountains, casting long shadows across the land they had nurtured together, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that sometimes love arrives in the most unexpected ways, even in the midst of terror and pain. What matters is having the courage to recognize it, embrace it, and build a life upon its sturdy foundation. For Jackson and Olivia Grayson, that foundation had proven unshakable, a love born in crisis, but destined to flourish through decades of joy, sorrow, challenge, and triumph. A love that had transformed not only their own lives, but the lives of countless others who found shelter in the community they created together. Not bad, Olivia often thought, for a love story that began with a terrified young woman being dragged by her hair, until a cowboy pulled her onto his horse and into a future brighter than either could have imagined.